Today we're going to be talking about how D1 level wide receivers can expose DBs with different moves at the top of the route and press releases. So this first example we're going to be talking about here is from Miles McAfee. He's one of the top route runners I've seen, at least at these different rivals camp series, wide receiver versus DB, one-on-one type videos. Everything he does is very smooth. Everything he does is very, very advanced. So we're going to break down what he does and why he's able to get separation on these first two clips and then take a look at some other wide receivers. So he's going to be running a comeback route here versus a DB who's inside shade press, and he uses a move called a peek back move, and obviously at the top of the route, he's very, very smooth getting in and out of his breaks. So anytime that we have a DB, so first thing I want to start out with, because I know a lot of receivers have questions about this, you see a lot of high-level wide receivers come out in a stance switch, right? Now, this is not necessarily something me personally I'm going to teach, especially with young guys. I always teach that the foot closest to the quarterback should be the foot that's up, but a lot of times you see wide receivers do this because it's just kind of a way to throw off the DB's eyes, maybe kind of throw off his tempo in a sense, and some receivers will do this. You see this at like an NFL level against zone coverage because of route step timing. So for example, let's say you're lined up out of the slot and you're supposed to run a two-step slant, and let's say the outside wide receiver is running a three-step slant. You can't run a three-step slant or a two-step. You can't run a two-step slant with your inside foot up. So you start with your outside foot up. This foot's one, then you break off the second step. So it's just mainly for step timing and to throw off a DB in a press coverage setting. But I always generally recommend foot close to the quarterback is what should be up. So he's got an inside shade press coverage guy. So off the ball, he comes off with his release. He attacks his DB to the inside, tries to hold his leverage. Anytime that we have a DB's lined up inside shade press, the best way to get him to move off of his platform, threaten him where he doesn't want us to go. And when he's inside shade and press, he does not want us to go inside. So if we could threaten him there, that's the best way to maybe to get him just take a simple false step, have dead feet. So when I release to the outside, I could get him to open up the gate and flip his hips. So now at this point right here, we obviously have to sell the 9. We have to sell the vertical. We have to sell the fade. However you guys want to think of it. Everything's a fade until it's not a fade. And there's 3 specific things that you want to focus on. Number 1 is going to be stride frequency. I don't need you to run with insanely long strides. I want great sprinting strides. I want good running form, obviously, but the strides need to stay the same all the way into the top of the break, into the break point in a sense, because that's the stride frequency. You don't need to be running as fast as you can. I would recommend probably going about 95 to 98%. You don't want to be going 100% where you're out of control, but you chopping your strides before you break, because maybe you're not confident in your hips, you're not confident in something called a trigger step, which we're going to talk about in a second, will tell this DB that a break is coming. But if you can maintain the exact same strides from the start of the route all the way up to the end of the route, that is very, very tough to stop. So it's about stride frequency, it's about running hard with speed, and then body language frequency, aka pad level. And he has all 3 of these things, you guys. It's why it's very, very tough to guard somebody who does these 3 things. You see how he's got this slight lean forward with his chest. I tell my receivers all the time, pretend like you are pulling a speed sled. That's kind of the forward lean that we want. And if we can keep that type of forward lean, the same type of strides all the way into the break point, that's very, very tough to guard. Now, a lot of times DBs are taught, like especially in a one-on-one setting, if you see a receiver come off the ball and he's going just balls to the wall as hard as he can, running as fast as he can, they are taught sometimes to expect a curl or a comeback. So this icing on the cake right here, this is a very advanced move, is this move called a peek back move, which is where essentially you peek back to the quarterback to sell like you were getting that fade ball over the top. So when he peeks back over this inside shoulder, notice though, it's just a simple glance. He doesn't peek back and lean back, raise his chest up, which would shorten up his strides and slow him down. It's just a simple glance, gets that DB to think fade, and then he puts the brakes on right now, drops his hips very smooth, and he's in and out of this break fast. That's a textbook route there for McAfee. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. It's exactly how you draw up that comeback route versus inside shade press with a peek back move. Now we're going to get into another great route that he runs, which is a stutter dig route. But before we get into that, fellas, if you're a wide receiver, guys, and you would like a daily workout schedule that you could do on the field to improve your route running, check out that very first link in the description below for our 8-week wide receiver on-field workout plan. It's over 200 plus wide receiver drills, all broken down with the exact sets and reps to do, and we give you a video example of each drill so you know what to do and know how to apply it. It's a schedule where it's like, hey, Monday you're doing this, Tuesday you're doing that, the works. Everything that's going to help with your route running, your press releases, your hands, everything. So guys, check out that very first link in the description below. Again, very first link in that description below if you're interested in our 8-week wide receiver on-field workout plan. Let's get back to this video. So now, let's talk about this next route here. So same thing, comes out in a stance switch, again, just to kind of throw off the DB's tempo, maybe to work a release that he likes out of this stance switch position. So he gets this outside release, gives this little stutter move, and then he bursts up and runs this dig route. So we're going to talk about why he stumbles a little bit on this break, because again, not everybody everybody's perfect. These are high school athletes, you guys. A lot of times I like showing reps where maybe high school guys don't run the route as perfectly to show you guys that, hey, listen, guys, these guys are human. You know what I mean? Just because they have like, the 4-star, the 5-star type ranking, or they got offers from places, doesn't mean that they don't have to work on the same things that everybody else has to work on, right? There's no complete receiver, I feel, at the high school level. They're very talented receivers. They're very explosive receivers, but I don't think there's a 100% complete receiver at any level. I think anybody can improve in a lot of different aspects of their game. Now, again, he's got this DB who's lined up inside shade press. Textbook way you want to run this route. Because if I have to run a 10 to 12 yard dig and I have a DB who's lined up inside shade press, I'm probably not going to get that inside release, right? This DB's lined up inside shade press for a reason. Doesn't want us to go inside. We established that with that example of that comeback route, right? So if I try to force it inside and this DB gets hands on me, that route is going to end up getting rerouted. Even if I get to the inside hip of him and I break, I'm going to be back on the opposite hash, you guys. You need spacing. You need to run realistic routes. For those of you that are watching this, that maybe you're going to attend a college camp, maybe you're going to go and there's to a camp where there's one-on-ones, coaches want to see realistic routes and realistic spacing on routes, not you just kind of running and just getting to the inside and catching the ball in the opposite hash when you line up on the numbers. That's not what we want. So he comes off the ball, he attacks him inside, takes this outside release. Now, again, this little stutter right here is just to sell more of the fade. Because if we're going to take an outside release on an inside breaking route, and this DB's got inside leverage, he's right on my inside hip, my goal is either to stack over the top of him where he is trailing me so I can maybe give him a fake to the outside, or my goal is to get him to open up the gate. I want his hips and his shoulders to flip to the opposite end zone so I could put the brakes on at the top of the route and slip under him. But I have to sell fade. Now, again, like we said, DBs are taught if this receiver is just coming out, running fast, and maybe he hasn't ran a fade route, maybe all he runs are these underneath 10-yard routes, comeback routes, whatever, to maybe expect that type of break, and you see this DB doing that right here. So this little stutter on that dig route, this little change in tempo, when he reaccelerates up to the break point, that puts that DB like, oh shit, he's going to be going vertical, and that might get him to open up his hips a little more, and then that's why we could put the brakes on, stop, and slip underneath him. Now, why does he slip on this break? Why does he stumble? So obviously, guys, whenever we drop down into a break, we always want to drop my hips and sit my butt down. I always say that you want to drop your butt to where it's even with your knees, aka a 90-degree angle. You see how when he breaks, his chin is kind of past his knee and past his toes? When you guys are running hard and you have good stride frequency, you have good body language frequency, and you have good speed, and you end up with your chin past your toes, you're going to drift forward and you're going to be off balance. He's essentially bending at his waist, not dropping his hips or dropping his butt. So I would say when he breaks down, if he could just try to think more chin to knee or think chest to quad and sit his butt down more, that would help him make a sharp cut. But when we get a little bit forward, that's what's going to cause that slip. But still, you see he's still able to get separation because that stutter and then that reacceleration, that tempo change is what got that DB to bite, and he's able to get separation back underneath. So again, Miles McAfee, great route runner, a very, very talented athlete. There's tons of clips. These are just 2 clips that I pulled from this like wide receiver versus DB rivals thing. There are tons of clips on there if you guys want to go check that out. You guys can check out all these one-on-ones. This is where I get a lot of my film from. If you go to like Rivals' YouTube channel, they have all the different, like states that they travel to for camps, all that. It's great teach tape because you can see a lot of some of the stuff that receivers do that does not work, that's not realistic, some of the things that DBs do that works really well, and some of the things that receivers do that ultimately does work well. It's good for you guys to see these things live and then maybe watch me, maybe watch me break down a clip like this and then go watch it full speed and just see those reps, see if you can identify the same types of stuff, okay? So now we got a DB here who's lined up outside shade and off man coverage, and this wide receiver is going to be running a 10-yard out. But notice where they're lined up at on the field. He's lined up on the 20-yard line, so they are in the red zone. So there's a couple ways that you could work this. Like he's running I would say probably a 15-yard out route, and this DB's sitting about 5 yards away, 7 yards away, off man outside shade. So a lot of receivers in this situation, because it's an out route, will want to just get to this blind spot of the DB and break to the out route, right? They want the DB to be on our inside hip so the quarterback can lead us. Now, the problem with that is that if I start to run to this outside, this blind spot, this DB is going to widen out. He's going to squeeze me to the sideline, and I'm not going to have any room. You need to give the quarterback room on an outside breaking route. So what we want to do is we want to attack his inside shoulder and his inside hip off of my stem. Now, there's 2 ways that we could do this. We could either come off the ball and accelerate, put my head down, run hard, run with long strides, get him to open up his hips and then slip under. But he probably won't do that in this case because because we are in the red zone. So at the break point, we are going to have to use a move. You still want to attack the inside shoulder. You still want to attack the inside hip, but at the break point, your move is what's going to get you open. So let's play this full speed. So he comes off here. He goes to the inside hip, gives this move called a rocker step, gets that DB to bite, and then he's able to win on that outside breaking route. I want to say this was more, he started to run this like an out route, and then he turned over the inside shoulder. I don't think this was like a fade. I think maybe if anything, this could have also been like a corner, but I think it just, the ball was maybe thrown. It just looks like a weird route. It looks like a little bit of confusion after the break, but let's treat it like a 10-yard out or a corner. It'd be the exact same type of way. So he gets to the break point, right? What's a rocker step, guys? A rocker step is where you step in the direction that you are going first. So you're trying to go to the outside, right? So you want to step with your outside foot first. So it's a hard step, but it's inside your frame, right? It's essentially a crossover, like a basketball player is doing a crossover at the top of the route. It's essentially a crossover, but the first step is just more of a hard step. You're stepping down because the goal is to push off of this first step to sell the second step, because we were trying to sell like we're running a post route, a dig route, whatever, to get that DB to overcommit and crash, and that gets me more separation with spacing to the outside because I didn't just run to his blind spot, right? So you see how he does his first hard step, pushes off of it, steps long with his second foot, his hips, his shoulders, his head, everything is looking to the inside, and that's what gets that DB to bite, and that's what ultimately gets a separation back to the outside. So that's how you would run that 10-yard out, guys, versus a 10, 15-yard out route, corner route, versus a DB who's 7 yards away, outside shade off man. Don't try to force it to the outside. Attack that inside shoulder, attack that inside hip, and threaten him with that rocker step.